Let's go into the Uber and Lyft situation. So Uber and Lyft, I have a couple of friends that actually worked for Uber or Lyft as like a side gig. But I've also met Uber and Lyft drivers that did this full time, right? Like one of my Uber drivers one time, he was picking us up from the bar and he told us that he did this full time, that he was retired and he just drives for Uber, right? And so some people that are drivers for Uber and Lyft do it part-time, but some people actually do it full-time, like it's a full-time job. We've reported about stories in reference to Uber and Lyft before, where they have been mistreating their workers, whether it's giving them some type of health insurance option, some type of, vacation time or paid vacation, etc. And then also the funds. So from what I understood, I've never driven for Uber or Lyft, but from what I understood from some of the people that I've spoken to that have, it appears that Uber and Lyft collect a lot of the profits. So you may make maybe $400, let's say on a Friday night, but all of that $400 doesn't go to you. And then remember, you have to supply your vehicle and you also have to pay for the gas. So those are other things to take into consideration when we're talking about this type of job. Well, apparently another issue that happened with Uber and Lyft is that they apparently were withholding money from drivers. They have now been ordered to pay $328 million. Let's get into it. Woo! This is a big one. This is a doozy.
Uber and Lyft have agreed to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for short-changing drivers. Plus, Starbucks is reporting record sales as customers buy pricier specialty drinks. ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophers has more on that and your other business headlines. Alexis, what are you watching today?
Watching Uber and Lyft because this is a major settlement for rideshare drivers. In fact, the New York Attorney General is calling it the largest wage theft settlement for her office. Uber and Lyft agreeing to pay a combined $328 million for withholding money from drivers, $290 million from Uber, $38 million from Lyft. The state saying the companies wrongly deducted certain taxes and fees from drivers' payments between 2013 and 2017. Eligible drivers can now file a claim to receive back pay and mandatory sick leave. Uber and Lyft say.
Let's pause there just for a second. She said this occurred from 2013. I think she said 13 to 2009. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me go back just to get the years, because I want to say something about.
Wrongly deducted certain taxes and fees from drivers' payments between 2013 and 2017.
2013 and 2017. So they got away with this for 4 years. 4 years.
Eligible drivers can now file a claim to receive back pay and mandatory sick leave. Uber and Lyft say they've been advocating for pay protections for drivers for years. Lyft adding it never violated any laws. More customers.
Never violated any laws. You owe people money. You owe people money. Let's get into the article. That is hilarious. Now, this came from the New York State Attorney General, actually released this statement. So let's get into this. Attorney General James secures $328 million from Uber and Lyft for taking earnings from drivers. So this is a big deal. It's coming from the Attorney General. Damn, you guys really messed up. New York Attorney General Letitia James today announced 2 landmark settlements totaling $328 million with rideshare companies Uber and Lyft for cheating drivers out of hundreds of millions of dollars. The settlements resolve multi-year investigations into Uber and Lyft, which found that the company's policies withheld hard-earned pay from drivers and prevented them from receiving valuable benefits available under New York labor laws. So this essentially is a labor issue. And labor laws are different state by state. Like Massachusetts may have different labor laws compared to New York, compared to North Carolina, right? But I want to make a good point about this, that I think when we talk about like solutions, like how can we move forward? How could this have been prevented? When you look at companies like Uber and Lyft, the people who are drivers, again, they have an employer. They provide their own car. They provide their own gas. And this is something that they choose to do this job. But still, I'm going to make a point here with this. But essentially, they have those flexible hours that they can do, but they're still working for someone else and they have no stake in the company. What I mean is they don't own a piece of the company. So when we talk about a possible solution in reference to this particular story, instead of working for Uber and Lyft, one of the best things that you can do is you can start a ride share company that's a worker co-op. There was one actually in New York. I covered it on the show a while back. Co-op Ride, I think was the name of it. But if you actually started anybody can do this, by the way. You guys don't have to work for Uber or Lyft. Anyone can do this. All you got to do is get someone that can design an app. Start your own rideshare company, but make it a worker co-op. That way, all of the drivers that work for those companies, they also own a piece of that company. So they actually have stake in the game. They're actually a part of the company, not just someone that's working for someone else. The CEO of Uber and Lyft, these people are making a lot of money, and they could have paid these people, and this settlement could have been avoided. So that's something that you could do. Work for a rideshare company that is a worker co-op. That way you own a piece of that rideshare company. Let's continue. Now it goes on to say, the settlements announced today will return $328 million in back pay to drivers and institute a minimum driver earnings floor, paid sick leave, proper hiring and earning notices, and other improvements in drivers' working conditions. Uber will pay out $290 million and Lyft will pay $38 million in two separate settlement funds, which will be entirely distributed to current and former drivers. So former drivers are also going to get a piece of this settlement as well. Eligible drivers can file a claim to receive the funds they are owed. Notices concerning the distribution will be delivered to drivers by mail, email, and or text message. And then there's information there about the submission, review, and distribution of claims available on the Office of the Attorney General's website. Rideshare drivers work at all hours of the day and night and take people wherever they need to go. This is coming from the Attorney General. For years, Uber and Lyft systematically cheated their drivers out of hundreds of millions of dollars in pay and benefits while they worked long hours in challenging conditions. Let's talk about some of those challenging conditions. You ever get in an Uber car late at night after the bars close? Oh, buddy, let me tell you. So some of my friends that did drive for Uber and Lyft, at least here in Boston, one of the ways you can make the most money is to pick up people after the bars close. So some of them have done that. You pick up the bar crowd. You don't know what you might get. You don't know what you might run into, okay? Someone might puke in your car. These are things that have happened. Someone might puke in your car. You got loud people in the back seat. Some people may try to be dancing and yelling and screaming or whatever in your car. You got to listen to the drunk rhetoric of the people in the back seat. I'm just keeping it real. It's wild. And then if you're doing like Uber Share, where you're trying to cut the price, one way of doing that is the Uber Share. So you're choosing to get into an Uber car with other people that are not with you to cut down on the cost of the ride. I've done that before too, like the Uber pool. And you don't know what you're going to meet or who you're going to run into when you get into those cars, but don't do it with the after bar scene. So there's that. There's also the risk that you have to deal with accidents. So let's say you're driving for Uber and Lyft, and let's say someone rear ends you and say it's not your fault. You have to deal with that. Let's say your car is totaled. Now you have the situation where you don't have a car to drive for Uber and Lyft. And I've known people that ran into that situation and they actually rented a car to continue to drive for them. So there are all different types of conditions that you do have to deal with. But that after bar crowd is no joke. Okay, so it goes on to say, these drivers overwhelmingly come from immigrant communities and rely on these jobs to provide for their families. These settlements will ensure they finally get what they have rightfully earned and are owed under the law. My office will continue to make sure that companies operating in the so-called gig economy do not deprive workers of their rights or undermine the laws meant to protect them. Yeah, the gig economy. It's a big thing. It's more popular now than it was, I'd say, 10, 15 years ago. And these kind of gig jobs, you know, it's like some people will take those jobs because that's the employment they could find at that time, or also because they may pay more. But a lot of times these jobs won't offer benefits. So no health insurance, no paid sick leave, et cetera. Some of those contract positions are like that too. Some of the tech positions are also gig jobs. So the workers oftentimes are not protected. The point that it makes here about some of the people that are drivers are from the immigrant community, not even just that, but here in Boston, I remember when I worked at MIT, one of my coworkers, who's not a part of the immigrant community, one of my coworkers at MIT also was driving for Uber and Lyft to help pay off their student loans. So oftentimes, a lot of these people, they're working multiple jobs. That goes back to the capitalism issue. From 2014 to 2017, Uber deducted sales taxes and black car fund fees from drivers from their payments when those taxes and fees should have been paid by the passengers. Uber misrepresented the deductions made to drivers' pay in their terms of service, telling drivers that Uber would only deduct its commission from the driver's fare and that the drivers were entitled to charge the passenger for any tolls, taxes, or fees incurred, though no method to do this was ever provided via the Uber driver app. Of course not. Lyft employed a similar method to shortchange drivers from 2015 and 2017, deducting a 11.4% administrative charge from drivers' payments in New York equal to the amount of sales tax and black car fund fees that should have been paid by drivers. Administrative charge. What are the administrative charges? What is it for? Do they ever tell you? When I was applying to colleges, right, like I thought it was ridiculous. Excuse me. I thought it was ridiculous that you have to pay for a college application. Like you have to pay to apply for it. One of the things they would tell you is that's to cover the administrative fees. What fees? To do what? What does the administrative charge actually pay for? They never explain that. Because the employees at those colleges, universities, or whatever, the employees at Uber and Lyft, they're already receiving a salary anyway. So what does the administrative charge cover? Let's go on. Uber and Lyft also failed to provide drivers with paid sick leave available to employees under New York City and New York State law. So you see, that's a New York thing. That's a New York thing. So again, different state, different things. In addition to paying a total of $328 million in back pay to former drivers, under the settlements, Uber and Lyft had agreed to an earnings floor, guaranteeing drivers across the state are paid a minimum rate from dispatch to completion of the ride. Drivers outside of New York City will receive a minimum of $26 per hour, adjusted annually for inflation, ensuring for the first time that thousands of Uber and Lyft drivers working primarily outside of New York City will be guaranteed minimum pay. Drivers operating in New York City already receive minimum driver pay under regulations established by the Taxi and Limousine Commission in 2019. So, $26 per hour adjusted annually for inflation. That's interesting. Uber and Lyft drivers will now also receive guaranteed paid sick leave. I can't even believe in 2023 this even needs to be said. Drivers will earn 1 hour of sick pay for every 30 hours worked, up to a maximum of 56 hours per year. Drivers completing rides outside of New York City will be paid a minimum of $26 per hour for sick leave, adjusted annually for inflation. To reflect the New York City minimum driver pay rules that already include an amount for paid time off, drivers completing trips covered by the TLC minimum driver pay rules will be compensated at $17 per hour for sick leave, adjusted annually for inflation. Uber and Lyft will also make updates to their apps to allow drivers to request sick leave through the app. You know, it's just interesting because these are things that just should have been done from the beginning. It's, Uber and Lyft will also provide drivers with proper hiring notices and earning statements. as if this even needs to be said. That should have been done. The hiring notices will accurately explain the earnings to which drivers are entitled for their work, and earning statements will accurately detail the compensation earned for each pay period. The companies will also notify drivers after each ride of the amount paid by the rider. The companies will provide an in-app chat support for drivers in multiple languages so they can easily ask questions about their earnings or other work conditions. In addition, drivers will now be able to appeal all deactivations from Uber and Lyft platforms. A lot of this could have been prevented if they did what they were supposed to do from the very beginning, but they were trying to be greedy. That's capitalism for you, trying to be greedy. Well, I'm glad that those drivers will finally get the earnings that they're owed. But again, work for a rideshare company that's a worker co-op or start one. That way you have a stake in the game. Thank you for the super chat, American Autopsy. From the feds going after Mayor Adams and Ben Shapiro trashing Candace Owens' white supremacy, showing it always breaks its tools when it's done to them. I think I'm going to cover that Ben Shapiro and Candace story on Thursday. Thank you, M. Smith, for the super chat. It won't stop until people are held criminally liable. Roger says, Uber, give me my dough that you owe. That's right. Because you guys know, at least especially from call-in, Roger drove for Uber. So, all right, Roger. All right.